Happy new week. Ivy Nation Sports Talk up and rolling along with Vince D'Addario. I'm Sean Stiers. I was just looking and saw there's another live show still going.
Yeah.
I think we can pretty much bank on it at this point.
Yeah, 4 is pretty much the number these days. So, and the only reason I'm aware is because I do all the cutting up, of all the shows, and so
true. Got to keep an eye on it. Yeah,
anywhere between 350 and a little over 4 is usually where they're at. So, content, baby, plenty of that.
Got a lot to talk about today. We're going to talk about Ja'Juan Seider. Kind of popped up out of the blue this weekend.
It was.
Yeah, and some other coaching talk. Tell you what's not still going on right now is that Chiefs dynasty. I guess at least for now. I mean, we'll see where it goes over the next few years. Did you actually watch? Like, how much of the game did you watch last night? When you turned it off? Did you?
Whole thing.
Well, I mean, you were pro Eagle. So
I was. It was a boring game, though. It was a boring game. I mean, if yes, I was pulling for the Eagles, but I really didn't have a dog in the fight. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't really like. I would have woken up the same way this morning as any, no matter who won. You know what I mean?
It's not like you were waking up going, Eagles won. Yeah, like you
could not care less. Yeah, could not care less either way. I was rooting for the Eagles just for something different, that kind of thing. Plus, I do enjoy watching Saquon Barkley, who was pretty much a non-factor.
He was
in the game. His reception was more, game turning or game important than his rushing was, is the way it turned out. But it was, if you're an Eagles fan, you're in a great mood right now because they dominated from start to finish. So
I don't know is John being sarcastic? How did Taylor Swift get tickets to the Super Bowl? I did think it was curious that they must not have a whole lot. I mean, you were at the Superdome. They must not have a whole lot of suites in the Superdome, even though they did this big renovation recently. I did think it was interesting that she was basically just sitting in what looked like regular upper level seats someplace. It
was interesting. Like they had like name tags on like the seats. Did you see that? Like
I missed that.
There were like pieces of paper on each seat that had like, all of the people, Paul McCartney and like, Chris Judd or whatever is, the Judd guy. But anyway, and they didn't take them off once they sat down. Like it was odd to me. I don't know why that caught me as odd, but it was very odd. And what I did notice when we were there was a lot of like ground level suites. You know what I mean? I haven't been to a lot of NFL stadiums, I guess, but I didn't realize ground level suites were like a thing. You know what I mean? Like ground level, it's like barely a fence. And then there they are, like right there. I wouldn't think those are great seats because a lot of them are behind the bench, and football players are huge.
Yeah, I've noticed that because I think it's like SoFi is the one, and there might have even been some in Atlanta when we were there.
There were
like those ground level. I completely agree because if you're sitting in those, unless you're 6'5" and above, how are you going to see in front of all those 6'5" football players too,
and more 6'8", but it just, I don't know. I wouldn't, I mean, it was cool because obviously you get food and whatnot. I guess it's a sweet situation, but like, I don't know that would be a great way to actually watch the game. Now, maybe some people weren't there to watch the game and that's fine, but
yeah. I turned it off by the end of the third quarter, and that was the biggest bummer. Is just I mean,
you get up early too.
Well, and not just that, like, what am I going to sit there and just keep watching the Eagles literally just beat the Chiefs into oblivion? I mean, it wasn't
fair.
Like you said, I mean, it wasn't fun to watch at that point, especially since I didn't want the Eagles to win.
True.
Like there was nothing, and it was over. It was not entertaining. So I tried to find something else. It was difficult because obviously there's not too much other good programming going on at the same time as the Super Bowl because
nobody wants to go up against it.
Million people are watching. But yet again, it was easy pickings for college football media types on Twitter last night, with the references to the selection committee putting the Chiefs in. And and that kind of thing. But it's just more proof that every once in a while, like you don't have to get bent out of shape and overreact to one team beating another team, one good team beating another good team. Sometimes that stuff just happens, man.
Yeah.
The Rams gave the Eagles a better game than the Chiefs did ultimately.
They did. And I don't know if you saw my tweet. I tweeted one time last night, and it was Nicole Auerbach. She covers college football.
Right.
And she tweeted, "I can't believe the committee put the Chiefs in."
There you go.
And I was like,
one of many.
Tweet of the night, man. Like, that was perfect. Because, if you're in the championship, you shouldn't get blown out, right? So
right.
I just thought that was really fun. And,
yeah.
At the end of the day, the Chiefs obviously deserve to be there, just like anybody that gets blown out in a big game deserves to be there and doesn't play very well, right? Yeah. And the Eagles just dominated on both sides of the ball. Plain and simple.
Yep. Mostly on defense is where they dominated.
I mean, look, the Chiefs couldn't get anything going offensively.
Chiefs defense was holding its own for a while, but it's one of those things, the more the game goes on and the more your offense isn't giving you anything, it's just going to, your defense is going to start to struggle too.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, look, it's the Chiefs' offense. Look, the Chiefs' defense was always good, right? But the Chiefs' offense was the one that kind of carried the day, and they got all the accolades, and they could pretty much score at will. And so the defense could do some different things because they're usually playing with the lead. You know what I mean? And that was definitely not the case last night. And
not at all.
Not at all. They were trying to dig themselves out of a hole, and it's just a situation that the Chiefs aren't used to. I know they went down by 10 and things like that, but they weren't down the way they were down. You know what I mean? Travis Kelce had no catches, I think, at halftime. I mean, Patrick Mahomes looked very pedestrian in the game. And
Patrick Mahomes was lucky to be walking by halftime.
I mean, I don't know. It's like they picked up these 5 linemen off the street. I don't know what happened in this game, because I realize the Eagles' defense is good. The front seven is good. But, according to the broadcast, they named their left tackle the MVP of the entire team, and he was on skates the entire night. Because I remember commenting to my kid as we were watching, 62 is just not having a good game, at all, in any way, shape, or form. And they're like, he was the MVP of the team. And I'm like, holy crap. Not good. Just not good.
Yeah, I realized Patrick Mahomes didn't have a good game, but it was in large part because those 5 guys in front of him were having an awful game. I mean, the fact that the Eagles never had to blitz last night and got that kind of pressure on Mahomes all night, sacked him 6 times. Man, it was like I said, it was ugly. We'll talk more about the Super Bowl in rapid fire. We've got a lot of Super Bowl stuff in rapid fire coming up. How about this running backs coach thing, though? Going to Penn State, raiding Penn State. I think you probably got to kind of like that. Ja'Juan Seider, Penn State running backs coach. He's 47 years old, native of Florida. He was the assistant head coach and the co-offensive coordinator, in addition to running backs coach at Penn State, where he coached, of course, Nick Singleton and Katron Allen. They each ran for over 1,000 yards this season. So, Vince, you sit here, you look at this, how happy should this make Fighting Irish fans?
I mean, it's from a fan standpoint, you finally went and robbed somebody of their great coach and brought them over to you. You know what I mean? Notre Dame fans are just used to getting their guys robbed, and that's what happens when you go to the championship game, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, it is what it is. That's the nature of being a good program and kind of a benchmark, to be honest. I had this conversation with a lot of different people, and it's look, there's something wrong if nobody's coming after your coaches. Okay. And every coach that has left Notre Dame has left for a better job. And that's not even subjective. They've left for a better job. They have, right? Al Golden is now a defensive coordinator in the NFL. That's a step up from being a DC in Division I college football. And same thing with Deland McCullough. He is now a running backs coach in the NFL. It's not a lateral move. You know what I mean?
Right.
And say what you want to about Chad Bowden. That's kind of a different conversation. And then he took somebody with him.
I'm leaving him out of the coaching
me
position,
too. I don't think that
there's a lot of money at play, and just
it's a different thing. Yeah, completely agree. That's a different conversation. But we're talking about 2 coaches have left. They've upgraded their position, and Marcus Freeman made a splash. In my opinion, he went and he said, "Look, I had the best running backs coach in the country. I'm going to go after the next best running backs coach in the country. And he did. And reading some of the things that Penn State has put out, like, some of their beat writers and things, they were expecting him to leave for like an OC job,
right?
Something along
or
those
even
lines.
A head coach, maybe.
And he left for a lateral move title wise, because I think he was also the co-offensive coordinator at Penn State. It might even be a lower. Now, we don't know what the official title is going to be yet, right? At the very least, it's a lateral move, right? And Penn State fans will tell you that, Notre Dame is the same level as Penn State or below. So depending on how you look at it, right? But it's a lateral move from a running backs coach to running backs coach. That's what I'm saying. Now, you can talk about Notre Dame is better than Penn State or whatever.
I will be curious to see
fine.
what kind of titles he gets.
Yes, I agree.
Because, is he going to get some kind of extra title, especially as someone just coming in, but again, leaving what he left. And of course, Penn State fans would try to tell you that it's,
of course,
that it's lateral. But I do have to think that, just for what we're talking about, for like the profile that Notre Dame has, that maybe he views this as a situation that's going to springboard him ultimately. Because that's the only I don't even know if it's a downside, but it just feels like if that's how the Penn State people felt, like the media when talking about him, like he was only going to potentially leave. They would have thought that he was only going to potentially leave to become an offensive coordinator or a head coach someplace else. How long is he going to be here?
Fair enough. Yeah.
Are they just going to be looking for the next running backs coach in a year or two down the road?
The bottom line is he didn't see it as a step down or as a lateral move, because you don't make this move if it's a lateral move, in your opinion. So, he obviously thinks there's more prestige and there's more of a chance for him to make the next move by coming to Notre Dame. And look, again, when you are a program like Notre Dame and you're going to national championship games on a regular basis, I'm not saying they've done that yet, but the perception is Notre Dame's a very good program, right? So he sees this as a step in the right direction for him, and you may be looking for another running backs coach in a year. And if you are, that means he took a step up. And I've said this all along, if you're a head coach, you surround, and at high school, college, NFL, whatever, if you are a head coach, you surround yourself with the best people possible. And if they leave for a better position, man, you smack them on the backside and you're like, hey man, good for you. Thanks for everything you did. And then you go find the next best guy. And so far, that's what Marcus Freeman did.
Well, yeah, because if Deland McCullough hadn't left to go to the Raiders or any other NFL team, if he had essentially left and made a move like this to another college program, I think that everybody'd be pretty ticked off right now.
Absolutely. Right? Yes.
So to be able to pluck a guy like this from a success, whether or not Notre Dame and Penn State are at the same level,
that's a different debate for a different time. Else. Yeah, right.
We know that they played a really close game on the field and Notre Dame won. Just what, a month ago, a little bit more than a month ago, not a month ago, not even a month ago. I get right. Well, yeah, a little bit more than a month ago. Right at a month ago.
I was going to say.
I don't know my calendar, Vince. It's February 10th. I can't keep track of what day it is. These days are just flying.
I know. I know. It's going to be like that for the rest of the month for you and then into March. So, yeah.
But this is, when we were talking about this last week after Deland McCullough, it was announced that he was making this move, his move to the Raiders. What was the biggest concern? Could Notre Dame find a guy who is not only a good coach on the field, could they find a guy who's also a good recruiter? And he's one of their lead recruiters. And when you look at Singleton and Allen and, other guys that he's recruited there to Penn State, he's right. He's at, we can talk about, again, whether the programs are lateral. When you look at Deland McCullough and this guy, Ja'Juan Seider, they are, very similar in what they both bring to the table. I don't feel like that there's going to be any drop off at all in either the coaching or the recruiting. You might have a little bit of a difference. Everyone's going to have a little bit difference in philosophy and, what they value and different things like that. But it's just like, I don't think that Marcus Freeman could have done much better, to go out and be able to get a guy like Seider.
I agree. I think that he got a guy that's a dynamic recruiter. He's obviously a very, very good coach. I mean, all you have to do is look at the results on the field. And look, he beat Notre Dame to get Nicholas Singleton. I mean, let's call it what it is, right? Because Notre Dame wanted Nicholas Singleton really, really bad. And he ended up going to Penn State. So, this is about as good a hire as you're going to get for a position coach. And again, we don't know exactly what the title is going to be. Maybe it is going to be some sort of a co-offensive coordinator or a pass, running game court, something along those lines, maybe, whatever. But at the end of the day, he coaches running backs. And I think Notre Dame isn't going to miss a beat from bringing in a dynamic running back, class and all of those different things. And that's what you want. Marcus Freeman wants to be a run-first offense, right? At the end of the day, that's what he wants to be. So you've got to have a dynamic guy in that spot, and that's what he did.
Did you watch the latest episode of Here Come the Irish, episode 8?
I keep forgetting to watch it. I know it came out very recently, so maybe that's going to be on my list of things to do tonight. I need to do that. I've heard it's very, very good.
Yeah, it's essential. They start off with right before the Sugar Bowl, and some behind the scenes stuff, and then they obviously have a lot of highlights from the Sugar Bowl, and then you've got you roll into the Orange Bowl, and they've got highlights from the Orange Bowl, and then they finish with the national championship game. But what made me think of this is in the lead up to the Orange Bowl, remember the press conference, the infamous press conference, James Franklin and Marcus Freeman, they basically played the hits. It's James Franklin, looking over at Marcus Freeman. How old are you? And, his hairline is perfect. And, then going into the rant about he thinks everyone should be in a conference and all that, like they used those comments.
Love it.
In that episode. And it was perfect. They just kind of let that stand alone and then into the game. But
nice.
like seeing that just a few days ago and then seeing Marcus Freeman basically, how that apparently fueled Marcus Freeman and in the comments that that the players made about that, and now again about a month later
just picked his pocket,
went right out and yanked him right out from underneath James Franklin.
Because look, Penn State fans and the Penn State program were riding high after stealing Jim Knowles from Ohio State.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm not comparing, a coordinator with a position coach, but at the same time, like you went into their backyard and you're like, yeah, I'll take him, and whoop, like he picked his pocket, man. And I freaking love it. I love it. I love
it. Absolutely. I don't like this seems like dream scenario. Like, are there any questions or concerns that really come with this?
To be honest with you, I think most of those concerns went by the wayside when I found out who it was, because I did have concerns going into the search and, how are you going to replace Deland McCullough? He's very, very good at what he does. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Not only from a coaching standpoint, but a recruiting standpoint, and the room tells the tale, right? With the dynamic guys that they have. I mean, they've got 4 guys in that room that could go start for just about any program in the country. You know what I mean? Keedron Young, Williams, Price, and Love. Like those are 4 really, really, really good players. And then you're also bringing in, a freshman class. So I was worried that they weren't going to be able to replace both things, right? Because we talked about this last week. If I had to pick, I want the guy who's going to be the dynamic recruiter, and I'll teach him how to be a running backs coach.
Right.
He checks both boxes, man. Like,
and he's got a ton of experience.
Yeah.
Both.
I am so excited about it.
Yeah. It's not like a Chancey Stuckey where the guy had, just started coaching basically, and Stuckey could recruit, but obviously we found out that there were, again, because the guy hadn't even been in the game that, in terms of coaching for that long. turned out that there were some, some obvious concerns that came with that. It only lasted for a year. So I think that again, this is just, it sounds so cliche, but it's literally just as home run as it gets. I think.
Agree.
I just don't think you could have asked for much more to get a guy like this. He's still, he's pretty young, 47 years old, so he's about 5 or so years younger than Deland McCullough. USMA 87 says, only question, how well will Seider get along with Denbrock?
Look, I have no concrete evidence, but if I had to guess, Mike Denbrock was involved in the interview process. I mean, how could he not be as the offensive coordinator? If
he's going to work on your staff, and again, as hands off as Marcus Freeman is for the most part, with offense, essentially knowing that, like Mike Denbrock is like your lieutenant of the offense kind of thing. Like you're going to entrust him with that. He's got to be, part of the process to bring in a guy that's going to have to work at least under him, if not,
side by side
with him, like if he's going to be run game coordinator or something like that, or, whatever it would happen to be.
Yeah. And look, again, I don't have any empirical evidence that is the case. I just can't imagine that Denbrock wasn't involved. And that's a great question, USMA 87. It is a great question because they're the ones that are going to have to work together. Right. And frankly, if I was doing it, I would have all of my offensive coaches involved, at least a little bit, in getting to know this guy or asking if they know this guy, from outside or, whatever the case may be, but getting feedback from all of those guys, to see what they think, because they all have to work together as a team. You can't have a fractured room when it comes to offensive coaches, or defensive coaches, right? They all got to get along. They all got to work together. So we want this to work. And I'm sure that they all had a say in some form or fashion, but I just can't imagine what the negative would be unless he's like a real a-hole off the field or something like that. Like, I don't, you know what I mean? Like, because he checks all the on the field and the recruiting boxes. So,
yeah, I think it would have been a bigger concern if this were year one for Marcus Freeman and he's piecing together, because you're kind of, at that point, you're still sort of trying to do it on the fly. And it's like, well, I got to find this coach, and I've got to find a safety coach. Now I got to find a running back.
Just doing
all these different things. I think it would have been a bigger issue a couple of years ago, but that like where things have gone and the way he's hired, they really feel like they've had pretty good cohesiveness. And so, again, you want your offensive coordinator, to be part of that process. Again, like, do we know that Denbrock was sitting in the interview room or whatever? Look, they get together and you're going to sit down for as long as you can and talk about philosophies and talk about a lot of different things, not just the head coach, but the coordinator as well. So, well, so they've got this checked off now with the Seider, with the running back coach, which I think is huge. I mean, like, I think you can put this right up there with, at least initially, one of the potentially the best hires of an assistant that Marcus Freeman has made, like maybe, splashing right behind Mike Denbrock being up there. It's interesting how many coordinators, though, that Marcus Freeman has hired in a fairly short amount of time, as head coach, because he brought in Al Golden, obviously, as part of his initial staff. He brought in Mike Denbrock last year. Now he's brought in Chris Ash, brought in Brian Mason and Marty Biaggi as well as outside hires to be coordinators. And then, of course, he promoted Jared Parker last year, and Parker has moved on. Which did you feel best about at the time, and which were you maybe most on the fence about at the time of the hire?
So I really had to think about this one when I read the kind of the rundown today. The first part's easy for me. Okay. The one I felt best about was Mike Denbrock, and it wasn't close. Because remember, I'm the one that said there was no chance in hell
never gonna happen. Coming. That's right.
Yeah, it's never going to happen. And the reason I said that in the first place was because he's so freaking good that pulling him away, I just didn't see it as a possibility. You know what I mean? Especially with the relationship that he and BK had, and all of the intangibles.
Well, and just a couple of weeks before that,
he signed a contract extension, or
they
agreed to one.
They agreed. Yes, they agreed to one.
Yes,
but he had never actually signed it.
Correct.
Which gave him the loophole,
right,
to get out. Obviously.
Yes,
but the details of the signing part, not something that we were privy to at the time we happened to be talking about that.
Correct. And so that was by far the biggest home run coordinator hire that I've seen him do. And it's a very short period of time, but that's the one, right? And as much as I will laud special teams, and Mason did a fantastic job as a special teams coordinator. That's why he got poached to go to the Colts, right? And Marty Biaggi overall has done a good job. There's some things that I have issues with, but overall, I think he's doing a very good job. All things aren't equal. Like offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, special teams coordinator, it's here, here, and here. You know what I mean? So those guys eliminated themselves out of this conversation for me. The one that I had the biggest question mark about, but then feel differently about now, is Al Golden. I mean, I was skeptical about the Al Golden hire, to be perfectly honest with you, with his track record and kind of where, he hadn't been a coordinator in over a decade and all of these different things. Very similar to the Chris Ash hire, to be honest with you. It's just the difference is I don't feel differently about Chris Ash because I haven't seen anything yet, right?
And that's the thing. That's the thing. I still am not completely in, but I'm also not out. It's just that
exactly
I'm sitting here on the fence because we've got to see something from we can't judge him until we at least see what he's done, right?
Yeah, 100%. That's why I am much more of the jury is still out with Chris Ash. I just need to see it. I just need to see something. Give me something, right? There's certain things you can obviously pull from his time at Texas or Rutgers or whatever, but the jury's still out for me until like the middle of October. Like, give me some time to see what he can do with this team. But Al Golden, and I was like, man, he is waiting until after the Super Bowl to make this hire. Like, he must really feel good about Al Golden coming over and being the defensive coordinator at Notre Dame, and he was just a linebackers coach, and now he's going to be the coordinator again. Hasn't been one in a long time. Like, it was a jury still out, but I was skeptical. You know what I mean? And he left Notre Dame as arguably one of the best defensive coordinators in the country.
Yeah.
So, hey, box checked. You know what I mean? So definitely feel different about that.
I mean, I won't say that I was like head over heels about Golden. I don't think that I probably was maybe as apprehensive as you are, just because he had a pretty long history of being a college coach, before he went to the NFL, both as a head coach at Miami and Temple and going back to being a coordinator. There was some question, in terms of, man, what's the defense going to look like? What's the system going to look like? Because he has been a position coach, and how exactly is he, going to call the defense? Like there was some question there, but at the same time, like he always, like he just, because of where he was coming from, I think maybe the Super Bowl kind of raised my, not level of expectation, but just, sort of my excitement, not excitement, but, just kind of what I thought that he could be. But again, I wasn't completely all in, but I would say more in on him than maybe even Chris Ash right now. I mean, I'm with you on the Denbrock thing. I think that we both felt like that was just such a home run hire coming off.
Well, and it helped we knew him. You know what I mean? Like he's been in Notre Dame. Yeah.
Yeah. But then, everything that he did with Daniels
absolutely
last year, as well as that LSU offense and the whole thing. So if I heard you right, you're saying you don't really count the special teams coordinators as much as the others. Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah,
like
I am saying
that.
I am saying that, and there's a couple of reasons why. Number one, I think, and this may be ignorant, and that's fine. I think coaching special teams is a heck of a lot easier than coaching a full offense or a full defense. Just think it is. You know what I mean? When we're at practice and we're watching the special teams coordinator, all the way back to Brian Polian and, you know, all these different guys. It's like they're just kind of there most of the time. And then when it's there, like 2 periods that they have in the entire practice, then they turn it on, the light switch goes on and they're all over the place. And then they just kind of dial it down and they're off to the side. You know what I mean? So I just feel like being a special teams coordinator isn't as difficult as being an offensive or a defensive coordinator.
I get what you're saying, but I would just say, like, after the standard that Brian Mason set, and because when Marty Biaggi was coming in, you're kind of looking at the track record and you're like, oh, I don't know. But again, it's special teams, kind of what you're saying, you know, like, okay, well, anyone, you know, not anyone, but he's at least got special teams background. But I would say that I was more on the fence with him just because it was kind of, it felt like his most recent stops, they weren't necessarily, you know, excelling in some of those same areas than Mason, you know, as Mason was. But I mean, obviously 2 seasons later, things worked out very well for Marty Biaggi, you know, like he's
I agree.
Proven himself to be, I think, every bit, you know, different, but every bit as excellent as special teams coordinator as Brian Mason was as well.
They're different.
Yeah.
And that's okay. You can still be super effective and be different, right? I think they're both very effective. They're both very good at what they do. I just have some issues with Biaggi and the way he uses the punter still. And that he just needs to get that part. If he can get that part right, then I'll be all on board. But it still bothers me when after all of this time, after a full year, he still has him trying to do rollout rugby style punts that the kid can't do.
Yeah.
That bothers me.
That.
It just, I know that's such a small piece of what he does, and he's good at the fakes and all these other things. But that one thing, man, it just bothers me, man. So that's where I'm at.
Man, Kim coming in hot. I don't know if Kim, like, are you a Chiefs fan? Did you wake up grumpy today, or
a Penn State fan, maybe?
Yeah, I don't know. Said the believe Coach Seider is coming to Notre Dame when I see him in shirt and hat talking from a Notre Dame podium. Until then, shut up about it. Well, there've been a lot of hires made over the last 3 years. Were we not supposed to talk about any of them until they were official? That feels kind of boring to me. Like,
well, and welcome to Notre Dame, where the vetting process
it's also
takes
February
weeks.
10th. Like, if you had a better topic for today's show, maybe you should have emailed me at 7 a.m. today.
Yeah, right.
And let me know. I mean, if you got one for tomorrow, just go ahead and slide it my way right now, and we'll get up on that for tomorrow's show.
I mean, look, we know it's happening. It's the vetting process at Notre Dame. So, you know, barring skeletons in a closet that everybody on the planet is unaware of, it's happening. So it's okay to talk about it. It's okay.
Yeah, because the other aspect of this is, maybe this is what has Kim, you know, so uptight. The James Blanchard thing falling through. But that's a completely it's not a coaching position. You know, it's an important position, but it's the general manager position. And we know, like, there's far less known about anyone in those kind of positions than there is, you know, than is known about any of these assistant coaches, because the track record is just different. The positions are still relatively new. I mean, are you concerned at all that they haven't hired a new GM yet?
I wouldn't use the word concerned. And the thing is, it's such a new position, like, overall, you know what I mean? Just the GM position in college football. It's such a new thing that maybe I'm not putting as much importance on it as maybe I should. But I'm not worried about it at all. Like, I feel like there are so many different guys out there that the average Joe doesn't know about. And Marcus Freeman's doing his due diligence of going and finding that person. You know what I mean? And I know he had potentially a good working relationship with Blanchard. It didn't work out for a myriad of personal reasons. It didn't work out. That doesn't. Yeah,
I mean, this wasn't like Notre Dame wasn't willing to match money or none of that. Any of those kind of things.
None of that.
Purely family stuff.
Yes.
On Blanchard's.
And it's not our place to talk about those things. And so we're not going to, but it just didn't work out. And there are other good ones out there. That's the thing. There's other good ones out there around the country. And maybe it's a situation where you're giving somebody a shot who has shown that they have the ability to be that person. Or maybe it's somebody that has an established track record. Who knows? But I think it's such a new position overall that you bring in a guy who's going to make his own way. And that's okay too. Could be a she for all I know. I don't know. Because this is a behind the scenes thing. You got to be obviously good at recruiting, and you got to be good at organizing, and you got to be good at all of those different things. It could be male, it could be female. I don't really care. As long as you're a super organized person and you know what your coaches are looking for, and you're able, to make those kinds of connections. So I'm not worried.
I think it's most important to find the right person and make sure that you have the kind of person who has the eye for the talent and doing, and essentially kind of running that department, because it's going to be, it'll still be more than just one person as the general manager. Or that, we're not exactly sure what the split will be in terms of a player personnel type person, the general manager, but there will be other people working under him as well. And TD4ND says potentially affecting recruiting short term. I just think that the short term they're okay, because again, they have people both coach between the coaches on staff, because it's the off season now.
Correct.
So that's the coach's main focus right now, is taking care of recruiting type stuff to whatever extent that they can. But they also do still have other lower level mid and lower level staffers, in that department, who are still doing what they're supposed to be doing along the lines of recruit. You just don't have, kind of the overall figurehead right now.
Yeah, this time of the calendar. You're right. The coaches are all in on recruiting right now. You just got to make sure that they're all doing what they need to be doing. And as long as that's the case, then you're good to go. It's the GM comes into play when the coaches are kind of split time, like during spring practice or, things of that nature. And you're trying to bring guys in. And remember, we would watch spring practice and Chad Bowden would bring recruits to Marcus Freeman in the middle of the field,
right?
Like during practice, like that's when you kind of need somebody running the show. You know what I mean? And they'll get there. Like I don't know when exactly spring practice is going to start, but they probably have a good month. Like I'm not overly worried about it right now. I don't think it'll hurt the recruiting in the short term. And if a guy doesn't come to Notre Dame because of the lack of GM for like a 3-week period, he probably wasn't coming to Notre Dame in the first place. Yeah. So I think everything is just fine at the moment.
Yeah. I mean, they're still out there on the trail right now,
right?
Making offers and, getting, interest at different levels. And
I mean, they had that huge junior day, obviously, right after Chad Bowden left. Now, I realize everything was kind of put in motion and was set and planned and all of that. And he didn't really even need to be there for it to run without a hitch, but it ran without a hitch.
Yeah.
With all the people that are still here. And last time I checked, he only took one person with him. So I think the recruiting process at Notre Dame is doing okay.
It's not like the staff and the department's been dismantled. I think they'll be all right.
Right.
Short term. I mean, you still got to get it filled, obviously. But
right. Of course.
Okay, Vince, are you ready for rapid fire?
Oh, man, let's hit it. A little rapid fire on a Monday.
All right. So Jeremiyah Love did a little ESPN over the weekend. They talked with them about hurdling, like hurdling during games, and Saquon Barkley's backwards hurdle came up.
Kind of like a daredevil type of player. Like, I wanted to go out there and do anything. And seeing Saquon, do the backwards hurdle, that really inspired me to, go out on the field and, try to play as free as I can. And shoot, that's kind of where I got a lot of my motivation to continue the hurdling. Seeing him do it on the next level, and then just seeing that, like, dang, that's probably one of the greatest plays in football history I've ever seen. So, seeing him do that, he plays my position, seeing him do that and play free, as free as he does, just gave me, a little bit more motivation to be myself on the field. And I most definitely plan on some point down the road to attempt at doing a backwards hurdle if the situation's right. But yeah, until then, I'm gonna stick to jumping over people the regular way.
Yeah. The regular way.
Like it's such a common occurrence for everybody else.
Exactly. So Jeremiyah Love wants to attempt a backwards hurdle. Are you in on Jeremiyah Love doing that next season?
Look, if there was somebody in the country that could do it, it would be him. I will preface it with that. But I'm out on him attempting it because I just don't like when you see other people try to hurdle somebody, it usually ends with them either not being able to land it, right? And going down immediately or getting tackled pretty quickly afterwards, as opposed to Jeremiyah Love, who just leaps over a guy and then just keeps on going. Like that's just not a normal thing. Doing it backwards, I just don't see the outside of just like the highlight, I guess, of it. You're going to have to like literally turn around and I don't know. Don't plan that, man. Like, I just don't see it working out. I don't know.
No. Like unless if he's going to do a backwards hurdle going into the end zone to win the national championship game, okay,
by all means,
there we go.
Let's get rolling. Yeah, right? I'm good with that
but
too.
I don't see any real benefit in this, especially after seeing him, end the season the way he did with the sore knee and all that kind of stuff. It's like, do we really need that much more? Like look at the Indiana game. It felt like that hurdle that he did in the Indiana game was just like, well, I'm doing this. It's like he was stuck in the backfield. He's trying to get out of the backfield, but it's like, okay, do we really need more? Do we really need more hurdling at this point?
Yeah, I get nervous every time he does it, but it almost feels like every time he does it, he gets better at it, which is wild all by itself.
Is there any truth to this rumor that Trevor's throwing in here? Vince could hurdle people backwards back in the day?
I mean, back in the 90s, you just never know what was going to happen, Trevor.
Vince was hurdling babies backwards back in the day. Dodging all those babies in his living room.
I was going to say, I feel like that's now, but they're not babies anymore. That's the problem. But yeah.
Ryan says we got to do the 4.5 hour show. Like Brian and Trevor.
That'll be past my bedtime.
Those guys are setting records every day, man. It's
Trevor and Brian are seriously setting records. Like
I know.
Guinness Book of World Record type stuff every single day. Trevor, whatever Brian's paying Trevor, he is earning every penny of it. I'll just say it. I'm here for you, Trevor. If you ever need an agent, give me a call.
We might have to push this show back to 6 o'clock again, the way it's going.
Seriously. Oh, it's Brian and Sean.
Oh, Sean today.
Oh, no Trevor. Well, that explains the extra half hour. My man Sean likes to get it out there. So that makes a little bit more sense. That's why Trevor's in our show. He's ready to he's like chomping at the bit.
Father David says the benefit is the backwards hurdle is awesome.
It is awesome. I'm just nervous.
We've only seen one successfully
correct.
Tried, and that was Saquon Barkley in an NFL game.
Correct. The last thing, I don't even want to say it out loud. Like something negative could happen after a hurdle. Like that's all I'll say.
Go down,
and people would be devastated. Yeah. Devastated for something silly.
That's what I say. End of the season.
Yes.
Backwards hurdle into the end zone.
Win it.
Win a championship.
His last carry as a Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Yeah, I'm good with that too.
Ryan's going to keep pushing for the 24-hour IB network. You're not even here anymore. What are you pushing? How are you pushing for this?
It's like he's the guy on the side just like needling. He's just like, just needling everybody. I love it.
Fill in the blank outside of Jeremiyah Love. The Notre Dame player who most excites you is blank.
So I need a clarifier. Are we talking about the 24 team or the potential of the 25 team?
25, still on the roster.
Ooh.
Going into 25.
Ooh. Okay, because I had different answers. Because I was going to say Riley Leonard if it was the 24 team. Okay, so that's where I was going to go there. The 25 team, and it's outside of Jeremiyah Love. I'm going to say it, and people are going to get pissed. CJ Carr. I don't care. That's where I went. Brian's with me. Brian, Brian NY, you're with me. I appreciate that.
Here we go.
See,
Here we go.
We're just getting a hype train rolling here.
Yep. Ryan says Boubacar.
I could see that
if healthy.
But see, the ball is in the quarterback's hand every single time.
Yeah, I know.
It's just that the odds are in your favor, I don't know. Man.
I'm gonna go offense. Since you went with CJ Carr, I'm gonna go Jaden Greathouse.
I was right there too. Yeah.
Full in on Jaden Greathouse being a dude this year.
You and Salty.
That's right. I'm going to ride that salty train, unsalted, but salted. I'm going to ride that salty train on the Jaden Greathouse being a dude this year offensively. I like that. I like the takeoff, the breakout, if you will, that we saw from him at the end of the postseason in the last 2 games. Defense, I'm going to go with the Don Schuler defensively. I think I like what Ryan is saying about Boubacar. I do want to see how healthy he is, to what extent that knee is going to affect him. Hopefully he's going to be fully healthy and ready to go by next season, but you never know. So I'm going to go with the Don Schuler. I just feel like this guy, it's still a bullet for him and just more opportunities with Xavier Watts gone now as well.
Brian NY and I are on the same page. It's Carr on offense and it's Drake Bowen on defense. I feel like with Drake,
that one too.
With Drake Bowen kind of bypassing baseball and just not focusing on that this spring and just focusing on football alone, I think you're going to see a big jump. And he was really good this year, right? He was really good this year, but I think you're going to see a big jump in his progression and in his leadership and in his playmaking ability, even more so from year 1 of starting to year 2 of starting without baseball being in the picture. And I think he's a tremendous baseball player. I just don't think he was playing as much as maybe he had hoped and, all of that. And baseball's his ticket. And so I think you're going to see a big jump.
I think so as well. I think so as well. He wasn't, he did obviously have to, devote a pretty good amount of time over there. Joe Allen says Onye. And I mean, it's exciting, obviously, that Onye is going to be back with the team, according to everything that we've heard. And I know Ryan had something on that, recently as well. But I don't know about you, but personally, I've kind of been waiting on Onye anyway for the last couple of years to kind of really make that step. And I mean, he was playing solid last year, but still not anywhere close to, I think, what we expected we were going to see.
With all the injuries, he may have had an opportunity to break out a little bit, but he was off the roster and it just wasn't going to happen, right? And he's just got a lot of work to do off the field before I get too far onto the Onye bandwagon. He's got the potential to do it. I'm not ready to predict that it's going to happen, though. You know what I mean? There's just a lot that needs to be fixed. And we'll see how it goes. I mean, look, he could probably do it, but I still need to see it.
Sean says he was missed, though, and you're absolutely right. I mean,
he was.
Especially at the end of the season when you had Riley Mills go down, and even with Howard Cross being banged up and stuff like that, he could have. He
was missed as a rotation piece.
Yeah,
and there's no doubt about it. He would have gotten more playing time if he was on the roster, but he wasn't. And let's see if he can make it through a year of being on the roster the whole time. You know what I mean? Like there's benchmarks that need to be hit before I'm ready to say that he's going to be a breakout type player.
Yeah. Saw a few people slide in Bryce Young, and I think that's a really that's a potentially a really fun one for next year. See him maybe with another 15 or so pounds on that frame and
not losing any of his speed.
Getting after it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that could be fun.
Big opportunity there in terms of the pass rush and everything that Bryce Young can give you. What position group are you most confident in right now, Vince?
The running back room. That's where I think they're going to legitimately be 4 deep, and what a great opportunity for a new coach to walk into. I mean, right? Like that, you're walking into an absolutely loaded room. So it's running backs for me. That's the one I'm most excited about. And it's kind of, look, it's football, right? So all the position groups are intertwined in some form or fashion. But with how good I think the offensive line is going to be as well, the running backs are really going to shine.
See, and that's mine is the offensive line.
And that makes perfect sense. Yeah.
Because I mean, it's just going to be like a stupid wealth, basically, for the offensive line going into next season. We've talked about it. The fact that you could have a couple of guys who started a whole lot of games this season, number 2 on the depth chart next year, and the fact that you've got Jagasaw coming back, potentially Gerby Lambert, just like everything that bodes well. I mean, there's a reason, obviously, that you saw some of those guys transfer, and it's because there's just so much going on and so much experience now with that line. It feels like a line that can just be flat out dominating next year. And if they are, they're going to take those running backs and everybody else to another level and help a really inexperienced quarterback, whoever ends up being the starting quarterback back there.
Well, and as of right now, Ja'Juan Payne is in that room still too. And I think people forgot about him because of, he got injured and all of those things, but he's on the spring roster right now. Now, I don't know if that'll be the same once they get to the fall, with his injury and everything else. But I mean, you've got incoming freshman Nolan James, Ja'Juan Payne, Jeremiyah Love, Aeneas Williams, Kedron Young, Jadarian Price. Like, that's a heck of a running back room. But I completely agree with you on the offensive line. Like, they're so deep and they're so like the front end talent on the offensive line is really, really, really good as long as they all stay healthy. And health is obviously a thing. Just look back at 2024. But the front end and the second team, whatever it ends up shaking out to be, it's really, really good offensive line wise.
Fill in the blank. The Notre Dame women beating number 21 Cal 91-52 is blank.
I was going to say unexpected, but why is it unexpected? Because of who they are, and what they can do. I mean, it was, well, first of all, it was very pink. There was a lot of pink going on. It
was pink.
Did you have a pink pullover on? I couldn't tell on the TV.
I did not. I had they gave me like the pink ribbon to put on my shirt. So,
so you just had a ribbon. Okay. Yeah. I mean, they just absolutely dominated from start to finish. I mean, they couldn't miss, it felt like, for a while. And I feel like this team is really just starting to gelling and starting to know what the others are doing and all of those things. And I mean, right now, like, Maddie Westbeld is like the 5th or 6th option, which is like mind blowing to me. It's so hard for me to fathom, but I mean, just this team is just littered with talent.
Think about this. Like, if Cal's ranked, whether or not Cal is actually the number 21 team in the country, I don't know. But just think about the ranking, number 21. Okay, so if that's the case, that was someone's going to be in that neighborhood, whether it's Cal or anyone else. Like, that's basically a Sweet 16 type caliber team that they beat by 39 points yesterday. And even the other ranked teams in that, they beaten by double digits in all of those games, like Georgia Tech. North Carolina was a little bit closer. It was a road game, but just think about that.
If that holds, they're a 5 seed.
Yes, exactly.
You know what I mean?
And then again, that's a Sweet 16 type matchup potentially. And they beat them by 39 points. And that's because of all those things that you talk about. It's really scary because I agree. Like Neil Ivey and I, and we were talking with Sherelle Allen after the Stanford game, the assistant coach, last Thursday night. Like, this team still hasn't fully hit its peak.
Agreed.
And that's what should be really scary for everybody else across the country is we're getting to mid-February. They've won 16 straight and they haven't hit their peak yet. I don't think they're really even close to hitting their peak yet either. There's a lot left for this team out there. So everybody else should be should take that into account and be really scared by what they see from this team.
There's no doubt about it. There's no doubt about it. And it's a fun team to watch. And I still watch the entire game, believe it or not.
See, that's a blowout you can watch.
Yeah, it was. I enjoyed it. It was great. I mean, and they share the basketball so well. They shoot the ball so well. I mean, they are starting to gel and come together, and like some of these no-look passes and all of this other, like, it is nuts. It is nuts. And I know you pushed back on me a little bit the other day when we did our women's basketball mailbag, when I said they're not even going to be challenged until they get to the Final Four. And I think it's starting to become more and more clear that that's the case. You know what I mean? And let's see how they do down. They got a tough stretch here of ranked teams that they're going to play. But man, I tell you what, this is a fun team to watch, and nobody's going to want Notre Dame in their bracket. Like, you know what I mean? Like in their region, nobody.
A week from tonight, they host a top 10 Duke team.
Yep.
So, you know, again, like that game in NC State, Louisville is still out there as well. And, you know, because they got to play Louisville a second time to close out the regular season. So, I mean, those are in terms of what's left on the schedule. I think there's only 6 games left in the regular season right now, and those 3 are half of them. They go to Pittsburgh this Thursday night, and you know, like I can't honestly even imagine what that's going to look like against a Pittsburgh team that's down at the bottom of the conference standings right now. But yeah, I mean, Duke and NC State should be the 2 top challenges. What exactly that looks like, I want to see that. I want to see what that looks like, because I definitely think it'll be good for them to be pushed and to be
absolutely. That's what you want. I mean, you want to be playing your best basketball going into March, obviously, and you know, you want that double bye in the ACC tournament so that you don't have to worry about playing as much. And what is it, if you have the double bye, what do you win? 3 games, you win the tournament, I think, something along those lines, right? 2 or 3 or 3 or 4.
Let me think. Quarterfinals, semifinals, championship. Yeah.
3 games. You win 3 games, you win the title, like, or, you know, the ACC title.
Yeah.
But I mean, like I said, this team is firing, man, and it's fun to watch. It really is.
TD4ND says, who would win if the women played the men? A little more size on that men's team. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what that would look like. So.
Yeah, and the men are going to be physical, and you know that whole thing, and that's what they would have to do. But the women will outshoot them. I mean, there's no doubt about that. They'll share the ball better. Yeah. They'll outshoot them. Nobody on the women's team is going to be able to stop Marcus Burton's first step.
Right.
You know what I mean? But I'd pay money to watch it.
That's the biggest challenge is when the women would be on defense. You know, it's obviously it's a completely different challenge than shooting the ball and you know, running the floor and doing some of those.
I'd watch it. But I would watch that game. I would.
Vince, did last night's Super Bowl put to rest for you the narrative that the refs favor the Chiefs?
Okay. Yes, overall. But after that first offensive foul penalty, or
you mean that clear offensive pass interference where he pushed off?
He didn't push off.
He pushed off 3 times. He stiff-armed him to create separation. He's freaking AJ Brown. Are you kidding me? He shouldn't need to freaking push off in the face mask. But okay, all right.
After that call, I was like, ooh, I don't know about that. But then after that, it was fine. Like, there were no issues for me after that call, because there was a lot of calls that they made that were not iffy, but like, I'm surprised they called that. You know what I mean? And it was on Kansas City, so I was cool with it.
The unnecessary roughness call in the first half, where Saquon Barkley got pushed in the back a little bit.
Oh, on that down. They were trying to run a screen, and wasn't it like 4th down too?
Well, it was 3rd down.
3rd down. Yeah. So it would have been 4th down. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, you don't throw a flag. Like, the only time that gets flagged is if that's the quarterback, basically. You know, like if the Eagles had pushed Patrick Mahomes like that and they threw a flag for an unnecessary roughness on the quarterback, everyone would have lost their mind if they had thrown a flag, and if that was Patrick, you know, if it had been reversed, it was Patrick Mahomes. And it was a freaking running back. And I couldn't believe that, because he barely touched him and he goes down. It's like, all right, you know, so it's felt like maybe they were overcompensating a little bit. But then, you know, like I didn't see this live, but watching the highlights today, there was a freaking blatant hands to the face with a, you know, Eagles defensive lineman just shoved Patrick Mahomes right in the face mask.
Yeah.
And there was no call on that, you know? So it's like, okay, I don't think they're going, you know, So again, it felt like maybe overcompensating a little bit, but I think the Eagles just left no doubt. So the officiating ultimately had no impact one way or another.
No, I agree with that. It had no impact. I mean, yeah, the Eagles just dominated that game from start to finish and had nothing to do with the officials. Yep. I mean, even if they wanted the Chiefs to win, they would have been so obvious. You know what I mean? If they were calling a bunch of stuff, getting big plays called back and all of that. But yeah.
Carlos says, who you rooting for there, Sean? I was not rooting for the Eagles. I think that's been pretty clear.
Very clear. Very clear.
I was not rooting for the Eagles. That is loud and clear. So after playing in 10 Super Bowls, Tom Brady made his Super Bowl broadcasting debut last night. Rate his performance on a scale of 1 to 10.
I'm giving like a 7.5, 8. I thought he did a good job. I didn't have any issue with the way that he called the game. I will say, and it's not even his fault, but they kept asking him about when he played and things like that. Like I kind of wanted him to get away from that a little bit, but they kept asking him, hey, what was it like when you did this? And what was it like when you did that? And this is similar to what you did. And like, I felt that was a little bit overplayed, but I don't blame Tom Brady for that. Those are questions that he's being asked. What is he supposed to say? Hey, like, guys, let's just stop talking about that. You know what I mean? I thought he answered them very professionally. I thought his insight to what Patrick Mahomes was dealing with, running for his life, I thought was actually really good because he was talking about his footwork and things like that.
Interesting.
So I thought that was good.
Okay. Let's start with the fact, and by the way, Joe has the number. It is 4.
Wow.
He was below average. Like he was there. He was there. I just didn't feel like he provided like any true insight, like, the footwork. Okay, whatever. I guess I missed that, and it's like we can all probably hear specific things, but like the fact that he called Patrick Mahomes Patrick all night.
That I did notice that, by the way.
That bugged me. As a broadcaster, especially, it is just way too familiar. It's like, you remember Bob Lamey, the guy who used to do the radio for the Colts? He would call everybody. It was like Reggie and Marvin and Peyton and, everybody
White
else.
Sox.
Like, that's
White
right.
Sox all day long.
That's exactly
and
right.
It annoyed the crap out of me every time I would hear the Hawk talking about everybody by their first name.
Yeah.
I agree.
I just felt like, for the most part, Brady told us, like he did talk a lot, as I think Father David said, but like, I don't think he really told us anything that we couldn't sort of see for ourselves most of the time. It's like, man, that's a big pass rush. Like they got on top of Patrick, they got that pressure on Patrick. Well, it's like, how about you tell us, like, maybe why they got the pass rush, or again, like going back to the fact that they're getting that much pass rush with just 4 guys and they're not even blitzing, and they didn't blitz all night, like how impressive it is that they're doing that. Or, okay, so what does Patrick have to do now to counter that impressive pass rush that they're putting on? Like, surprised he didn't kind of call for more screens or, something, like to actually tell us, like to give us any true insight. Like I felt like it was lacking, like maybe I'm being a little bit more critical again, as like, someone who broadcasts as well, not the analyst part, but this is a guy who displaced a really good analyst in Greg Olsen from that
Greg
number
Olsen
1
is
booth. And Greg Olsen
about it too.
Yeah. And Greg Olsen is still better than Tom Brady. And see, again, broad audience. I'm sure most people probably didn't care last night, but I just felt like if you were actually listening to his actual analysis, I felt like there could, like he could explain the whys a little bit more, why and how to us a little bit more.
Do you think Greg Olsen, I'm not debating you that Greg Olsen is better now. I'm not debating that at all. If you go back to Greg Olsen's first year doing it, do you think he's better than what Tom Brady is now?
No, that's a good question, because Olsen got to do, parts of a couple of seasons being in a number 2 or even 3 or 4, booth where he wasn't the number 1 guy. So he did get a little bit of seasoning.
And I do have a problem with the fact that Tom Brady comes in his first year and is automatically in the top chair. I have a problem with that. Like, you got to work your way up to that top chair. And the only reason he's there is because of his name and how much money they're paying him, right? I mean, that's
exactly
the bottom line.
Exactly, because he's Tom Brady.
Yeah, right.
But that's also why more is expected of Tom Brady. As a Hall of Fame quarterback, as of right now, he's still the best to ever do it. Like,
sure.
You just
Agreed.
It's just those things that you're talking about. Another season or two, maybe he kind of finds some of that. He was a little bit looser in the playoffs maybe than he was at some different points during the season. I felt like I've said this before. I've just never felt like he's the most natural guy to get in there and do it. As much knowledge as he has, it feels like he's thinking too much and probably, has a lot of notes coming from network executives or the producer, director, or whatever. And he's thinking and sort of trying to plan what he's going to say in advance rather than actually just reacting.
Yeah. And that takes time, which is why he shouldn't be in the seat.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm almost grading him on a curve. You know what I mean? Like, because he's never done games like this before. You know what I mean? And I expect the worst. And so maybe it's just like, well, he wasn't the worst. So I don't know. I feel like I'm grading him on the curve a little bit, but I'll stick by it. I'll stick to my grade.
I mean, that's why, and a lot of people don't like 3-man booths. I really kind of feel like it might have been better for Tom Brady to
help him
be
out
in
a little bit.
booth.
Sure.
Yeah. To kind of bring
that.
some different things out.
I could see that for sure.
Yeah. I don't know if Greg Olsen would have liked that either, but at least he'd still be in the number one booth if it were those three.
Right.
So fill in the blank. The new Fox score bug was blank.
It was awful. That was the most rudimentary, disgustingly big score bug that I've ever seen. And as soon as it popped up at the very beginning of the game, I was like, what the heck is this?
What is that?
Seriously.
Yeah.
Too big. It was just, I don't know, man.
Too big,
awful.
Too generic. Like I felt like it was great if a high school media class made it, right. Because it felt like
scratch.
Any high school media class could have made that. Because the logos weren't even, like
there were no logos.
No logo. Yeah. It was just like KC PHI. Like
it was horrible. And let me tell you, I've watched a lot of high school broadcasts. They're better.
They probably have better.
Not the overall broadcast. You know what I'm saying? The
graphics, the
score bug,
the chyrons. Yeah,
it's better. It's way better. I honestly, I don't understand who was like, yes, that's what we need to roll out during
the Super
Bowl. Like that's what we need. Because if Fox decides that that's going to be their thing moving forward, they could not have gotten any positive feedback from that thing. There's no way.
So. It's awful. Yeah, it was just so generic, very bland. Like I can't even remember what they had in other playoff games and during the season. Now I know it looked a lot different than that though, and
oh my gosh,
I know I didn't have any problem with it. Just
right because it was just there, and
the
score bug should be like seen and not heard, if you will.
Right,
like this one was heard. Like you know what I mean? Like it was so loud. Yep. It was awful. It was absolutely awful.
Okay, Vince. So I'm gonna light up fire on this whole show when I bring this up because I know where this is gonna go. First, though, before I even get into it, I do have to say that when I sent the show outline today, I found out just what the actual age gap is between Vince and I, because I feel like philosophically we agree on, like more than we disagree on. He's definitely more old school, especially, he's an old school guy and who I obviously tease sometimes about, like who is the older guy here.
It's fair
with some of his takes on some different things. But I asked him if the Super Bowl halftime, if Kendrick Lamar made the Super Bowl halftime last night, jump the shark. And Vince texted me, what does jump the shark mean?
I had no idea.
So I had to explain what jump the shark mean. And of course it derives from Happy Days when Fonzie, it was like the, late run of Happy Days. They went to California. Fonzie is water skiing and he jumps a shark in, while he's on water skis. And that created the term Like this show has jumped the shark, like it's past its prime, like its best days are behind it, that kind of thing. So that's kind of what jump the shark means.
Kendrick. Now it makes sense.
Yes.
Thank you for explaining it to me. Okay.
Kendrick Lamar, so I asked you if Kendrick Lamar had made the Super Bowl halftime show jump the shark. You can answer that if you want, or you can just give me your old man take on Kendrick Lamar. You can just get it on.
Look, I didn't know who Kendrick Lamar was in the first place.
I didn't either. I had to
the
Google.
music
I don't know how many times beforehand I even had to keep finding out who's doing the halftime again. I couldn't remember anytime I heard his name. So.
Just wasn't my cup of tea in the first place. The most entertaining part was I would like to go back and figure out how many people came out of that car at the beginning. It was like a clown car. Yeah. I thought it was hilarious. Like we were all trying to decide how they were doing that. Like that was the conversation in my house, was how did they get all the people to getting out of the car? After that, I don't know. It didn't do anything for me. That's for sure. Like I am a Samuel L. Jackson fan, but it was was he supposed to be like the ringleader, like a circus? Like, was he the guy that's normally wearing like the red coat and the top hat, but he was wearing like stars and stripes? That was the interesting take, I guess, on the whole thing. And then apparently Serena Williams was in there, and I didn't know that.
I didn't realize Serena Williams was
I found that out after the fact. And then I'm also finding out after the fact that he was making fun of people and he was doing all these different things. Like there was all these underlying tones. I felt like I was back in senior year English, reading a book and my teacher's being told, well, this actually means this and this actually means that. It doesn't mean exactly what it says on the page right here.
Like we were supposed to dig out all the metaphors and stuff, when you're.
It just, too much for all of it was too much for me. Didn't pay a whole lot of attention to it. It was on. I didn't change the channel. I watched it. But yeah, it was not. See, Brian, don't be making comments like that.
I just feel like, look, here's the thing. Is it my music of preference? No.
Fair.
You don't like the music. I didn't like the music. Probably most people over 40 or 55 or so fall into that category.
That's probably fair.
Fairly safe assumption.
Yeah.
Right? It's not geared toward us.
My kids knew some of the music, and they like some of the music.
That's the thing. I get
it.
The average age of an NFL viewer is mid-50s. That's the average age.
Right.
The NFL, like everyone, wants a younger audience, which is why they have the hip-hop and the rap acts and stuff that they've had the last few years. They're not bringing back Aerosmith anytime soon.
See, that was one of the better ones.
It was. But, for old heads like us,
I know.
Aerosmith was one of the better ones. But they're not gearing it towards us anymore.
Should be.
Because the last three, I think it was Usher last year, and you had Dr. Dre and Snoop and all that a couple of years ago in Los Angeles. Visually, I thought that there were some pretty cool things. Like you talked about the car, and then you had, Samuel L. Jackson doing Uncle Sam and all that. But, the flag, with the guys in the sweatshirts with the, red, white, and blue and that kind of thing.
Very patriotic at times. I think it was supposed to be patriotic. It looked like it was. Yeah.
Right. So, visually it looked pretty good, but again, there were no songs that any of us knew.
Right.
I couldn't recognize anything last night. That's the biggest problem to me, because again, you've got over 100 million people watching this thing, and at least half of your audience is in the demographic that we fall into, which is older, right? So if I couldn't tell it and you couldn't tell it, how is grandma and grandpa supposed to tell it? That's the problem. At least 2 years ago, again, Dr. Dre, Snoop, is that do I have a bunch of that, on my playlist? No. Mary J. Blige, Eminem. But at least I recognize some of
the music. Yes.
Yes, that's
because
right.
that was at least around when I was younger.
Exactly.
And I recognize. And a lot of people that are my age absolutely loved that halftime show.
Exactly.
Right. And again, that's not my music, but I recognized it. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And so I was on board.
I don't feel like you can do 15 minutes of stuff that half the audience has no idea.
I'd say more than half.
Yeah, I'm being generous, I guess. But you know what I'm saying.
I do.
Yeah, I feel like So if you're going to have an act like that, you need some kind of collaboration where you can bring in some stuff, at least like 1.5 songs that people recognize, So that's, like the original halftime show. And I was listening to a podcast like a week or two ago, like in the lead up to the Super Bowl. They were talking about the original Super Bowl show was early 90s. It was the Super Bowl halftime show. Early 90s, Michael Jackson was the original one.
Best one.
But when they did that? They did it the year after. This was before Fox had the NFL, and Fox did counter programming to Super Bowl's halftime the year before, and they did In Living Color. You remember did you ever watch In Living Color?
I know of it, yeah.
Jim Carrey and all them and like so they did in Living Color at halftime, and so the next year they were like, well, we got to do something to counter this, if other people are going to put on counter programming and try to take away our audience. So they bring in Michael Jackson. Well, of course, everybody knows Michael Jackson, right? It's like you've got all these,
that was so good.
pop. Yeah. I mean, that was like literally one of the best ones ever, So if the idea is to keep people watching, I just feel like you can't give more than half your audience a reason to either hit mute or, flip to something else at halftime.
Give me your top few off the top of your head. Halftime or Super Bowl halftime shows.
Prince was awesome. Michael Jackson was good. The Aerosmith show was good.
Yeah.
You probably can never bring Justin Timberlake back again because of what happened.
He's been on there twice because he was on there with NSYNC and Britney and Aerosmith, like the three of them. Like
that's right.
That was a great collaboration in my personal opinion.
Yeah.
Like that was awesome.
Yeah,
that was awesome. And then
those were all good. And of course, I'm a Springsteen fan, so I thought Springsteen halftime was pretty good too.
J-Lo and Shakira, that was actually really good.
That was probably the last good one.
Yeah,
that you can get a consensus on. But I don't think too many old heads are going to turn down J-Lo and Shakira at halftime. You know what I'm saying?
I'm not. So. I will not be the first one to do that. So
no. That's right.
But you and I are on the same page, at least as far as halftime shows are concerned.
Yeah. Michael Hahn, U2. I forgot about U2.
Yeah.
That was pretty good. But again, you're just all those acts are getting older and they just,
I know.
They're not going to.
Which is true. Anybody that I would want to hear probably can't sing anymore. Probably, So it is what it is.
TD for ND, Paul McCartney. There you go.
Yeah, man. Bring Paul back. Let's go. I'd be all for Paul McCartney movie.
Give us a little. Get creative.
Give us something. Give us. Yeah,
if you're gonna go the hip hop R&B route, at least find some kind of more middle mainstream act that you can do a couple collaborations with.
Yes,
in the middle.
Last year and this year were just way too similar for me.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. So,
and even Usher, I knew a couple of the songs last year, but last night. No idea.
Yeah, exactly.
No
idea. We're showing our age, and that's fine. My kids didn't even really enjoy it. They recognized some of the songs, but they weren't exactly enjoying it. So, whatever.
What about TV commercials? Do you have any favorite TV commercials last night?
It was a down year, man. I was not.
I feel like the last few years they've really. It's almost like they've almost given up.
I know. And people are still paying $8 million for a 30-second spot, which is nuts to me. So the ones that stood out, the pickleball one with William Dafoe and the mom from Home Alone, I thought that one was pretty funny.
Oh, yeah, that was pretty good. Where
they were playing for Michelob Ultra, I think. So I thought that one was pretty good. I like
this one. I like this one Michael's talking. I like the very first one, the Dunkin' commercial.
Which one was that?
With the Afflecks and Bill Belichick and his girlfriend were in there. It was literally the very first commercial break, I think, of the game.
I must have missed it. So, well, whoops on my part. I'll have to look that one up. Because I couldn't remember a lot of them, so of course I had to.
Belichick was just Google. Kind of standing there trying not to laugh. It looked like
that's probably accurate. I thought but
they were dressed in. You remember the Dunkin' commercial they did a couple years ago?
That one was hilarious
with Affleck and Matt Damon.
Yes.
And they had the jumpsuit.
Yes,
they were all wearing the orange jumpsuit.
Oh, well, now I've got to look that one because I thought that one was fantastic,
including Belichick. So
okay, that might be a winner. The Matt Damon, David Beckham one was funny-ish. You know, it was okay.
Yeah.
And I don't know, the rest of them were just okay. I don't know. The Matthew McConaughey thing where it's like the NFL makes you think about food.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like isolated, that would have been a funny commercial to have during the Super Bowl, but they've been doing that
a different version of it.
Yeah.
Like, Jerry likes rice, or
right.
Jerry's eating rice.
Like,
yeah,
okay,
like,
it's a funny concept. Like, I'm on board.
Right.
I think it's
if
funny.
they would have debuted it in the Super Bowl,
yes,
instead of blowing it ahead of time.
Yes, that's exactly right. And that's the other problem with all of this. All of these are, if you want to see them, you'll see them all ahead of time.
Now. Yeah.
And that's no fun. I like to be surprised. So I purposely didn't look for any of them this year.
Sean said Seal and Mountain Dew. Do you remember? I thought that was just weird.
That was weird.
Seal as a seal.
Like, I had to explain to the people in the room that the guy with the head and the seal, his name was Seal. And like,
see, and here's another thing. Like, they won't give us a halftime act that gears toward, the over 40 crowd, but they gave us a When Harry Met Sally Miracle Whip commercial, or whatever it was, Hellman's or whatever it was.
Which was actually pretty funny. Because then they had what's her name, but like, I'll have what she's having.
Yeah.
That was actually really good. I
Even
thought
though
that was pretty funny. But I'd seen it before. I saw it weeks ago.
Yeah, it was creative, but like I heard a couple of, one, like Meg Ryan was kind of doing a bad imitation of herself. I know she's older now, but still, like the original, didn't quite hit that note. Two, the deli they were in, I heard some people who I think it's Katz's Deli in New York. They were like, who actually orders a turkey sandwich in Katz's Deli? Because I think they're famous for pastrami or something like that, So like sitting in this deli where like, who is actually using mayonnaise in Katz's Deli, kind of thing. But
fair enough.
Yeah, it was solid.
Yeah. But I mean, nothing was really like, I'm usually a sucker for like the Budweiser commercials and all that.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh, wow, a Budweiser commercial. This would be great with the Clydesdales and the whole thing. And it was like, It was a little guy that rolled a keg down the road. Like,
I agree.
I agree. Yeah.
General lack of creativity.
Really, so much so, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's going to do it. We did not go to 4.5 hours.
Sorry.
Shocker.
3 hours shy.
That's right.
God, can't even imagine.
Whew. All right. Well, we're going to wrap it up with that. We've got plenty of shows coming up the rest of the week. Next week's going to be a little bit interesting because I've got a Monday night basketball game, and then Thursday, like traveling later in the week as well. And I think you guys might have some conflicts too, but we'll get through this week, I think. Okay. And we'll see what happens when we get to next week.
Yep. We'll figure it out. Yeah. This week will be,
we might have to bring Ryan. We might have to bring Ryan back.
Yeah. Sorry, Squirrel. You're in. You're tagging in.
There you go.
Because I still don't know what's going to happen next Thursday. So we'll have to see how it goes.
All right. Hit the like button before you leave, and we will talk to you tomorrow on IB Nation Sports Talk.